Hello, this is Kate from dailytarotgirl.com, and today I am so excited to be talking to Benebell Wen. Benebell Wen is a certified tarot master, and she's also a lawyer, a feng shui practitioner, an I Ching practitioner, a numerologist, and an astrology enthusiast. And she's also the author of the upcoming book, Holistic Tarot. So welcome, Benebell.
Thank you, Kate. I really can't wait to talk to you.
Yeah, so I've read your book and I love it, and so
Okay.
I want to ask you tons of questions about your book. But first, I want to know what was it that drew you to tarot? Like, how did you get started with tarot?
When I was a really small kid, I was into this Chinese myth. It's called Shioji, Journey to the West. And it's just this myth that's full of colorful characters. And I guess one of my relatives from Taiwan bought me a playing card deck. It's just a regular playing card deck. But on the face of all the cards, there's all of the characters, right? So as a kid, knowing nothing about tarot, I would just draw the cards at random into spreads arbitrarily and just pretend that the characters that I drew somehow narrated what was going on in my life. I would just tell crazy, fantastical stories about myself through just the characters in the cards. And so I've always had that sort of predisposition toward this kind of practice. And then in junior high, when I discovered tarot, it just clicked. And so from there, I was really drawn to the practice, and I started studying it more intensely in college.
Mhm. So you were kind of into tarot before you even had a tarot deck.
You know what's funny is we always talk about how we got into tarot, but this is going to sound really woo-woo, but I feel like tarot draws certain people to it. Do you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like a lot of people are exposed to tarot, but not everyone just kind of, latches onto it. And so, some people become athletes. Everyone works out, but some people become professional athletes. And
Hmm.
so I think there's a predisposition, and certain of us just, have this thing in us. And as soon as you're exposed to something like tarot, it just clicks and
Hmm.
you just can't of it. So I feel like we're all like that. Those
Hmm.
of us who.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that because I know for me, I was exposed to tarot early on in my life, and but I wasn't interested in it, and it wasn't until later on that I became interested in it. I thought, oh, that's funny because it was a time in my life when I was sort of becoming more interested in kind of spiritual things and wanting to find the deeper meaning behind things. But before that, I knew tarot existed, but I wasn't drawn to it. So that's interesting.
I think it's also, yeah, different stages of your life too. And when I was really skeptical of tarot for a while as well, I kind of, veered away from the practice. And then later on, when I felt like I was in a point where I really needed spirituality in my life, I came back to it really full force. So, yeah, it does come to us when we most need it in our lives.
Right, yeah. So what advice would you have for someone who is just starting out with tarot and they're just starting to learn it?
Well, for tarot, I mean, it's chaotic. There's just so many
Hmm.
different traditions, right? So first thing I would talk about the three main traditions. You have the Tarot de Marseille, you have the Rider-Waite-Smith, and you have the Thoth. I mean, then there's the Voyager Tarot, Mary L, some of the more contemporary ones. But these are
Hmm.
the three main ones that have
Yeah.
really rooted themselves in tarot history, right?
Hmm. Right.
So you need to figure out which one connects to you more. These are three pretty distinct traditions. And,
Hmm.
if you're more of a purist, people who tend to, want to, they say they want to read intuitively, or people who really want to connect to the original tarot, at least from a chronological perspective, are going to, gravitate toward the Marseille deck.
Hmm.
And then the Rider-Waite-Smith, which is what my book is key toward, is sort of the golden standard.
Right.
And that is when, I mean, that's when the Golden Dawn started incorporating tarot into their practice. And so there's a lot of different esoteric traditions integrated into the Rider-Waite-Smith.
Hmm.
And if you want to have the best of all of those worlds, I think the Rider-Waite-Smith is a really good deck to start with,
Hmm.
numerology, astrology, and all of that. And then the Thoth, I think people who really want to focus on, I call it energetic work. I don't know, like people who really want to work on the occult side of life, work with occult energies. I think Thoth is really great for that. So figure out which tarot deck you gravitate toward, and then find texts and even teachers who are going to teach in that particular tradition.
Hmm. Mhm. Okay, I'm glad you cleared that up and made that really clear with the three distinct tarot traditions, because I actually wasn't 100% clear on that myself. And I tend to sort of, I gravitate towards the Rider-Waite-Smith tradition, and I tend to sort of ignore the other ones, even though I have decks from those other traditions and I use them. I'm not, as focused on them. But you said something interesting about how um, if you're interested in, reading more intuitively, that you might want to work with uh, the
The
first one.
Marseille
Yeah,
deck.
the Marseille. Um,
Uh-huh.
and is that because, like, I have some Marseille based decks, and those are the cards, for people like watching this right now, those are the kinds of decks where the minor arcana are not fully illustrated, so they'll just be like, if it's the Two of Swords, it will just be a picture of two swords. It's not like a scene like in the Rider-Waite decks. Um, and I find when I read with those decks, it's easier to read intuitively because I don't uh, kind of glom onto the traditional meaning of the card, and don't get hung up on that, and I can kind of go wherever. Um, do you do you find that, or how's your experience been with that kind of deck?
This is funny. I'm going to actually backpedal a little bit. I actually think when people, oh my gosh, okay, when people say that when you read with the Tarot de Marseille, it's more intuitive and the other decks are less intuitive, that's hogwash. I
Mhm.
think intuition is intuition is intuition,
Right.
and there's just different ways to get at intuition. I can look at this rock
Mhm.
and, get information from the rock, and is that more intuitive than reading tarot? I mean, it's just
Right.
it's hogwash. But I think when you're reading Tarot de Marseille, you're going to be using different parts of your brain. I
Right.
mean, I'm really talking out of my butt now. I really
Yeah.
apologize. But
It's
I
okay.
just feel like you're using maybe numerology. You're also sort of looking into the forms, the abstract forms on the cards, and using that to tap into your unconscious and tap into your intuition. Whereas with the Rider-Waite-Smith, you have the pictures. And so people who are more visual, people who are more artistic, people who use that part of their brain, that's going to tap into their intuition much sooner, much faster. So
Hmm.
it's just different ways of getting to intuition. I don't think it's more intuitive. I
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
people who need to use forms, who like the abstract, who need sort of a blank slate,
Yeah.
they're going to work better with the Tarot de Marseille.
Right. Right. And
I just want to make that clear.
yeah, and I didn't start reading with a Marseille type deck until I read with the Rider-Waite for years.
Yeah.
And I would not have been able to learn on a Marseille deck. Like I wouldn't have connected with the minor arcana cards at all. So I
Same
wouldn't have
here.
been able to do that. But, after reading with a Rider-Waite based deck for a long time, it was different and easier than when I started with
Absolutely.
it.
And it's not one is better than it's just people are different types of learners. Some
Hmm.
people learn better through, letters and
Hmm.
numbers. Some people learn better through pictures. And so that's really all it is. So
Right,
I didn't
right,
want to make that clear. I don't think one's more intuitive than the other at all.
right. So when I was reading your book, Holistic Tarot, which I think it comes out in January, is that right?
January 6th. Yep.
Yes. Okay. So when I was reading your book, I was really struck by how similar our kind of not our theories on tarot, but our approach to tarot is somewhat similar. And so I just want you to sort of explain what your approach to tarot is in a nutshell.
Ooh, in a nutshell. Well, this is definitely not going to be a nutshell. Overgrowth. That's how I wrote an 800-page book. I talk a lot. So, I think there's different pedagogical approaches to tarot. Just like, for example, I'm going to use violin as an example. There's this Suzuki method where people actually memorize whole concertos before they know how to read sheet music. And then after the fact, they start learning how to read the basics of music. Then there's the more traditional way where you learn music theory, you learn how to read the notes and scales and etudes, and then you get into the concertos. Then there's people who just say, screw all of that, and you pick up a violin or a fiddle and you play intuitively, you play by ear. You just literally just start playing, and whatever music comes out, that is creating music. So tarot is very much the same. You don't really need a book. You don't need any theory. You can just pick up a deck and start reading intuitively. And other people really like theory. They like to have a strong analytical foundation. And that's where I come from. I want people to start with the basics. I want people to first figure out what is their theory for why tarot works, and then understand how the different symbols in each card, how you can deconstruct that and understand why this card means this. Don't just take it from a book. Why does it mean that? Understand that, and then start putting it together into spreads, which are the narratives, and understanding how the narratives work. So my approach is going to be a little bit more analytical. And I know some people think if you're too rational based, then your intuition shuts off. And I don't think that's true. I can walk and chew gum at the same time. I can use different parts of my brain at the same time. And when you integrate all of that in a holistic way, I think you get the best of all worlds. You know, when you make a decision, you don't just use cold, hard logic, you know, and forget about compassion in the human element. And you can't just be all emotional and forget about logic. And intuition is just another facet. And we do use that in decision making. You know, we have that gut instinct, that gut feeling, and sometimes we use that to drive some of our decisions. But if you don't study spirituality and you don't practice your intuitive abilities, then it's sort of a shotgun, like you don't really know when it comes and when it goes. Tarot helps you speak the language of your intuition and bring that into a controlled environment where you can start using that to make decisions. So that's where I come from. I don't really see it as, I mean, I don't want to say I hate the word fortune telling, but it just has all of these connotations with it. And I know I'm going to, you know, make so many enemies in the community because I do find it to be a fortune telling tool. And even my community, like Asians are really into their fortune telling. They're really into it. So, you know, but I shy away from that. Maybe it's my educational background, but I like to see it more as a rational, rational exercise. So.
I'm with you on that. I tend to shy away from emphasizing the fortune telling aspect of tarot. It's funny because I get so frustrated um, when I do readings, and if I'm doing a reading for someone and all they ask about is, you know, what's coming up in the future. But then
Yeah.
when I'm doing readings for myself, I notice that I'm always asking about the future. And even though I always say to people, like, you know, the tarot's really good at you know, giving a snapshot of what's going on now, and you know, that's what it's for. I find myself, I'm kind of a hypocrite that way, in that I want to know about the future. I'm like that too, but it does drive me crazy too, that whole emphasis on the future with tarot, because I feel like it's kind of disempowering in a way, right? When
Mm-hmm.
you're so focused on you know, what's going to happen and trying to find out the future. I think it's much more powerful to use tarot as a tool for, you know, self-exploration and that kind of a thing. So
Yeah,
that's,
but
yeah.
also, you know what I think though? So, for example, because I am in the business world, I'm a corporate attorney. So, I'm always working with startups who are presenting their businesses to try to get venture capital from our company. And so, you know what? The biggest part of every single presentation I've seen in the business world are the projections and the
Right.
milestones. They're really into that. And then, you know, like the profit margins and the project, these are things that, you know, actually make no sense because there's no way you can conceivably concretize this right now. You have no idea what the future variables are, but it's a big part of investors' decisions as to whether or not they give money or not give money. They want to see the projections. They want to understand what your milestones are for the next 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in a way, tarot is kind of like that. I do see it as projections. You know, I do want to see what's up ahead so that I know what decisions I have to make today to make sure I reach those goals. So in that sense, I don't really mind future telling as long as you understand that they're just projections. You know,
Right.
there's no way that's a fixed outcome. It's just something that's going to happen based on current variables.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay,
So I'm
that
not
makes sense.
against
Yeah.
that, you know, like I'm not
Yes.
against it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that's interesting that you say that, you know, the future is also important in the corporate world. I think that our culture is so future oriented that it shows up in, you know, tarot, business, and everything. So I really liked your analogy that you gave about, you know, the different ways of learning tarot and approaching tarot, and that analogy about the music, you know, studying music. Because I'm often asked, you know, what's the best way to study tarot? Should I just get a deck and start playing around, or should I, you know, take a course and actually learn, you know, the traditional methods and traditional meanings and stuff? So I really like how you put it, because I never know how to answer that really, because I feel like it kind of depends on your personality, you know, and what approach it's going to work for you. I don't think there's, you know, one right approach for everyone.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I agree with that. Like if you just gave me a deck and said, play with this. I mean, I'm just so structured. My personality is someone that's really structured.
Hmm.
I kind of like color between the lines. And that's not a great thing. I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think it's also a bad thing. It's just how I
Yeah.
am. And so
Yeah.
if you just gave me a deck and say, read intuitively, I'm not sure I could work that way. But then other people who would really be lost in structure, I wouldn't give them a structure because
Hmm.
that doesn't even make any sense. They need that sort of that liberal unformed terrain for them to really work with their intuition, and that's a really cool way to work as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what drew you to write your new book?
I was teaching tarot.
Mhm.
So I was teaching tarot to students and I was drawing up the syllabus and, taking bits and pieces from other books like Paul Foster Kay's, Aleister Crowley's book as well. And then slowly putting together how my pedagogical approach to tarot teaching. And then from there I started, oh, I don't know. I was just inspired to write a book from that.
Mhm.
After I created my syllabus, that became sort of the structure, my table of contents in a way. And then it was actually a Thanksgiving break in 2012. Around this time, I sat down and I just started writing the book and putting pieces from my own tarot journal together,
Yeah.
and eventually it became a book. And North Atlantic Books, which is an amazing publisher,
Yeah.
picked it up.
Oh, that's awesome. So, so could you tell the viewers a little bit about your new book? And I know, like, I've read it and it's very all-encompassing. It's like everything that you need to know about tarot.
I hope
And
so.
it's like there's so much valuable information, packed in there. So I'm just wondering if you could give the viewers kind of an idea of what your book's about.
Um, well, I hope it's a primer. I hope
Mhm.
it's a primer that if you know nothing about tarot, and also if you're a skeptic, if you don't really understand how tarot works, I hope to explain that to you in a way that you can understand and in a way that people who are more rational based will accept. Because if anything, I want to expose tarot to a wider audience, people who might not be into it, because I feel like intuition is such an integral part of making decisions and making smart choices for yourself.
Mhm.
So it's a primer for that. But at the same time, because I was teaching people who wanted to become professional tarot readers, and so there's a lot of that element into it. I talk a lot about ethics because I feel like any profession that wants to be taken seriously has to have a code of ethics. You see that in every single profession. They have a very strict code of ethics that they follow. And I'm not saying it all has to be the same, but there are some basic ground rules so that we all know what to expect when we go see a professional tarot reader. And so I really get into that as well. But hopefully it's a primer, it's a go-to reference book, a compendium that you can keep in your tarot library that you can go to over and over again. I hope
Mhm.
it's timeless. That was my hope. So
Yes, I think it will be.
I
Yeah.
hope
Yeah, you sent me the like the sort of PDF version, and
right, one of the
yeah, and as I was reading it, I was like, "Oh, I really want to bookmark, these pages and make notes and stuff." So I know I have to get the physical copy just so I can just so I can read it properly, because it's such a huge, amazing book.
it's hard to read. I mean, I hope people buy the ebook too, but
Hmm.
it's really hard to read as an ebook. I was
Hmm.
trying myself. I'm like, forget it. I
Yeah.
printed it out. It's
Yeah.
really real,
I
really
find
hard.
I find most like kind of how-to books are hard to read as an ebook. I love to have the physical version.
Same here.
If I'm just reading some sort of like trashy romance novel or something, then it's fine on an ebook. But
Agreed.
all my
Agreed.
tarot books I have, in physical physical copy.
Mhm.
And that's a question I have. Have you ever tried the tarot cards or the oracle card apps that are on like phones and stuff? Have you ever tried those?
I do. How do you? I mean, it's tempting, right? So, I mean, on my phone right now, I have a couple of apps that are the tarot apps, and for fun, like purely for entertainment purposes, I will play with it.
Mhm.
But for me, serious readings, I still need the deck. I like to handle the cards. It's how I work with my mind and how I connect with my own, my
Mhm.
own part of my brain. So
Mhm.
the app is a little, I don't know. I mean, I'm just not into electronics and
Yeah.
digital too much anyway.
Yeah.
But if you're really into tech, I can
Yeah.
see it working for you. I just
Right.
not for me for me, I need physical books, so I'm going to need my physical tarot deck.
Yeah.
The are really just for fun for me. It's like, oh, this is so much fun. I have a tarot deck on my phone. It's
Right.
fun.
That's exactly how I feel about it too, is I feel like tarot just begs to be read physically, and I'm not technical either. I don't even have a phone, so I've never even tried.
Oh
I've
man.
managed to make it this far without getting a phone, which I'm
Oh,
pretty
that's
proud
great.
of. But yeah, so I've never actually even tried the electronic apps, but I often get asked that, like, what do you think about these? And I don't know what to say because I've never tried them. So um, one question I have, and I know we've already talked a little bit about this when we're talking about, the future aspect of tarot reading, but is there anything that drives you, is there any like misconceptions about tarot? And I mean, I know there's so many misconceptions about tarot, I think. Is there
Uh,
any in particular that kind of drive you really crazy?
I think the one that really just makes me, well, it makes me more sad than anything else is when people say that only unintelligent, uneducated people would be into tarot. That if you're truly an educated, enlightened person who, values science and
Mhm.
values fact-based theory, fact-based, practices,
Mhm.
there's no way you would be into something like tarot. So you have to be superstitious and you must be stupid to be into tarot. That's my biggest pet peeve because it reminds me of, when I was a kid, I'm really bad at science. I'm really bad at physics,
Mhm.
right? And so I didn't understand physics and I didn't understand people who were good at physics. And almost maybe I was a little jealous of people who were. So my way of making myself feel better would be just to say, well, physics is stupid,
Mhm.
and because physics is stupid, I don't have to learn physics.
Right.
And I feel like that's the same. I mean, this kind of metaphysical work is really hard to understand. Most of us who practice it don't even understand it because we don't have the tools yet in our arsenal to understand why it works. Just like our brain is still a huge mystery to us, how our
Mhm.
brains work. So when people jump to that conclusion, it makes me really sad because these sometimes they're the most scientific, they're the science-based people in our world. And for them to be so ignorant about something they don't understand just makes me really sad. And it
Mhm.
also demeans, it's a really personal attack on people who do engage in this. And so
Mhm.
that's my biggest one, If
Okay.
you don't like it, if you don't get it, that's cool, but don't say it's stupid and
Mhm.
don't demean and don't have these ad hominem attacks on people who do practice it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's something that's bothered me too. Another thing, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, it probably has, but like when you tell someone that you're into tarot or that you read tarot for a living or, that this is what you do, and they just kind of like look at you and they're like, huh. And you kind of wonder, like you see the wheels spinning, like are they making assumptions? Like that always drives me crazy when you get like no response at all.
I know. Well, my day job is something different, right? And
Yes.
actually, it's a day job where people completely don't associate with spirituality or some of the other practices that I do. Because, like you had mentioned, I am into numerology, I'm into the I Ching, and so a lot of times I actually don't tell people. And it's
Mhm.
really, I really don't I keep the worlds very separate
Okay.
because I have experienced very judgmental remarks where they're just like, so, but you're an attorney, your whole profession is based on what you can prove,
Mhm.
and you're into tarot. How does they question my professional competence as an attorney? And so I actually don't think that the two are mutually exclusive.
Mhm.
A lot of attorneys are very intuitive,
Mhm.
and what they do is they just don't call it intuition.
Right.
It's legal. And actually, when what I learned in law school is how legal reasoning is,
Mhm.
there's this thing called IRAC, issue,
Mhm.
rule, analysis, and conclusion.
Mhm.
And when you read tarot, how do you read tarot? So you get the question that the
Mhm.
person has asked. That's the issue at hand, right?
Yeah.
Then the rule is, you draw a card, and the card that you draw, you start thinking about what the card corresponds with.
Mhm.
That's the rule, so to speak, the
Mhm.
universal or the karmic rule. How does that apply to the question at hand? That's the analysis, the application part. Then you conclude it for the querent or the seeker, right?
Mhm.
And so a lot of what tarot readers do, they IRAC. That's
Mhm.
called IRAC. IRAC is a form of legal reasoning. And
Right.
so I found that to be really interesting that tarot readers use legal
Yeah.
reasoning in how they apply tarot.
Right.
So the two are not completely separate. I completely
Interesting. Wow.
digress. Yeah, I totally digress from what you said, but
No,
I
that makes
just
sense. Yeah.
so
And I think that's interesting what you were saying about people sort of judging you, saying, oh, but you're a lawyer, like, why are you into all this woo-woo stuff? But the interesting thing is, when I started reading professionally and I started reading via the internet, not just my community, I was really shocked at how people from those kind of professions come for tarot readings. Like doctors, lawyers, people who I would think would totally not be into this kind of stuff, and yet a part of them totally is, and they might not be open enough to it to want to learn how to read tarot, but they're open enough that they would consult a tarot reader or a psychic when they're in a time of change, or when they need some advice, and that always that continues to kind of surprise me.
yeah, a lot of my clients are Fortune 500 CEOs and CFOs and people you just wouldn't expect to be into this, and
Hmm.
obviously other attorneys. So
Right,
I
right.
and every tarot reader can attest to this as well. A lot of their clients are people you would never expect to be into this, but
Yes.
they keep it hush hush.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah.
Actually, I also do personal training, and when I used to work in a personal training studio, and I had lots of clients, I would, they would ask me, about my life and stuff, and I would sometimes mention that I had this tarot website, or that I did tarot readings, and I would say about more than half my clients would hire me to do a reading for them, and it really surprised me that there was. Um, that kind of interest in, like, I wouldn't necessarily assume that someone coming for, exercise or for personal training would necessarily also want a tarot reading. Those, you think those things don't really uh, mesh together, but they do, and it continues to surprise me how tarot, fits in with other, areas of life that you wouldn't, initially suspect.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Agreed.
yeah. So, I have a couple more questions for you. My number one question is, where can people find you? Like, I was looking at your website, and you've got some really good resources there for people who are studying tarot, like some good worksheets and stuff that people can go and print out and work through. I just want you to let people know, where they can find out more about you.
Benebellwen.com is my website. So there I do provide resources. I blog as well, and it's also at benebellwen.com. I'm starting to get into Twitter. I'm trying to get into Twitter, but I don't really understand it quite yet. So on Twitter as well. And email me anytime. I know a lot of people, they come across my website or they come across something and then they decide to email me. I'm totally cool with chatting with complete strangers. So benebellwen@live.com.
Nice. Okay, I'll put those links as a pop-up in the video, and then I'll also put it in the description of this video too, so people who are watching can check that out. And so your book comes out January 6th, and can people pre-order it right now on Amazon if they want?
Yes, you can. Yeah, you can pre-order it on Amazon. You can pre-order it on Barnes and Noble, Random House, directly through North Atlantic Books. Random House is the distributor. So pretty much, I think if you Google holistic tarot or Benebell Wen, you'll come up with links that take you to bookstores or retailers that are selling it. So.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I'm super excited for your book to come out in physical form, so I can so I can highlight it and write notes in the margins and stuff.
You know what's funny is, we do have such strong intuitions because even though, we've never met before, and my only connection to you is just reading your, internet stalking you,
Yeah.
right? But you always know who you can connect with and who you can't. Some people you get a vibe like, oh, I think we have very different views. And some other people are like, oh, I bet you we have the same views. And it turns out we did. So it's just really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I've really enjoyed talking with you, Benebell. I
Thank you
feel
so
like you're like the easiest person to talk about tarot with.
much. So, I would say the same about you. I was, oh, I don't know how to do these,
Oh,
interviews. You made it so easy. It
oh,
really, really
well, that's
enjoyed.
good to hear. Thank you. Well, I wish you the best of luck, and thank you so much for chatting with me today and sharing your approach to tarot and telling me all about your new book.
Pleasure was all mine. Thank you so
Okay,
much.